Most hospitals will tell you not to eat during labor, but we are here to tell you that you should eat during labor and why. I'm Rachel from the Mighty Mama Movement, a mother of 8.
And I'm Heather, a family nurse practitioner and midwife.
Okay, so this topic is a little bit controversial because current existing hospital policy in the United States and in several other countries is that you are not allowed to eat during labor and you can't eat during labor. And we're going to talk all about our issues with that policy and things that you need to know, because this can actually make a really big difference in how your labor pans out, including your risk of C-section and other complications. It's not just a small thing like, oh, just eat, don't eat. It actually matters. So stick with us and we're going to explain that all to you. Let's start out by just explaining what the policy is and kind of history. And when we say that the hospital policy, we can't speak for every single hospital in the country and the world, but basic across the board, pretty general that it is the policy, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So it really started when they began using twilight sleep. So when they were knocking women out, they didn't have a way to intubate women. So if they threw up, they could aspirate, inhale what they threw up, which could cause pneumonia, infection, and stuff like that. And so, and who wants to throw up from a person that's unconscious or partially unconscious? So they started telling women, okay, you can't eat in labor because it was too dangerous, because they didn't have the technology to be able to handle that, especially if they went into surgery. They didn't have epidurals, they had general anesthesia. And so they just said, okay, no eating. And in medicine, policy changes take a long time to change. Birth is really interesting. More policies in birth are grounded in no evidence than any other specialty. And like eating, for instance, there's no evidence to show nowadays that eating is dangerous. Like, you should be able to eat. In fact, the evidence shows it's more dangerous to not eat. So that's kind of where it came from. And we are just, 60 years behind the times.
In that.
Yeah, we're still stuck before they could really intubate and had epidurals. So we need to help hospitals realize this. I would tell my moms when I was a doula, they'd be like, I am so hungry. And I remember with my first baby being really hungry. I didn't get breakfast. Labor started early in the morning. And me thinking, you've got to be kidding me. Well, here's the thing. In early labor, eat. Should you be eating steak, things that are going to be heavy on your stomach? No. And let me tell you why. Because the blood that would typically go to our stomach to help the food digest is going to go to the uterus to help nourish baby and the uterus, to give it oxygen for this really hard work.
Your body's busy right now.
Exactly. And so what will happen is it's will be more common for someone to throw up, because the stomach says, I can't handle this. I can't handle, I'm going to throw up the contents because I can't do it.
I'm already busy. I'm occupied. You're giving me too much.
Exactly. And all the blood is going to the uterus to help with the job that the uterus is doing. But the body also needs kind of carb loading. We talk a lot about
fuel.
Right. We talk a lot about it being a marathon, and we carb load before marathons. They drink energy things as they go through a marathon and to keep that energy flowing. And that is labor. And if you let a woman eat, yogurt and trail mix and snacks and juices, that sort of thing, she will instinctively eat what she needs to eat. Now, when you put an epidural in the picture, there's not much instinctual there, because you've turned off some of her sensory, and so she will eat whatever her brain says it feels like, or rather than what the body says it feels like.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a woman that is sitting there with an epidural, that is a different case. But when you're talking about unmedicated childbirth, the body will instinctively tell you what to eat. The bananas, the fruit.
So just kind of like when I don't know. Sometimes I'm not hungry, but because I haven't eaten for a while.
Right.
And I just kind of feel, I don't feel the hunger, but I feel like I need to eat something.
Right.
Like that type of a
Right.
feeling, like I'm feeling tired and feeling low, like I need a pick me up type of a feeling.
Exactly.
Quick side note, if you are pregnant and you want to get that baby out with less pain, listen to this. I'm a mama of 8 and my first 3 births were excruciating. I honestly thought unbearable pain was just part of the deal. But everything changed with my 4th baby when Heather, the same midwife and nurse practitioner you see in these videos, taught me a completely different way to handle labor. I had never heard anything like it. And I ended up dilating to 10 centimeters with 0 pain. After 8 babies, I can tell you this method works. Most mamas never learn these strategies though. Even if they want to avoid an epidural, they worry they won't be able to. That was me. I had done tons of research, but I never found a real method that actually worked, just scattered tips. After learning this, I never considered an epidural again. That's why Heather and I started teaching this, because birth does not have to feel like torture. Our 10-step practically pain-free birth method has helped so many women, like Mumina, who said that her twin birth was way less painful than her first singleton birth because she used this method. If you're curious, click the link below and save your spot in our free online class, How to Give Birth with Practically No Pain.
And so those light things will help keep mom going, but it won't put the burden on the stomach that needs a ton of blood flow. So typically things that are easily digestive, more live, they have their own live enzymes. Unlike something that is going to sit in your stomach for hours, like pasta is going to sit there for hours. At the birth center where I am, we just let moms eat whatever instinctively they would like to eat. Now we do make encouragements. We're like, please stay away from fast food. You know, let's get something more nutritious for the body. But I also I don't think I've ever had a mom say, hey, I want fast food. You know, she wants more nutritious and very light. And she doesn't sit down and eat. But let me give you an example. We had a mom once, was having kind of a long labor. So, you know, the energy is depleting.
Right.
And at 8 centimeters, she said, I'm really hungry. And we said, okay, what do you want? And she wanted a Subway sandwich. And so her husband went, it was just a couple blocks away. He went down the street, got her a Subway. And I'm not even kidding. It's like her labor slowed down. She ate 6 inches of this Subway sandwich. And then her labor kicked in again and she had her baby like 2 hours later. And we were like, that
Maybe
was
she needed
interesting.
energy. Yeah.
Right. And we said, you know, just so you know, you might throw this up, you know, just so you're aware. But you know what? That is what her body needed. Now, am I going to suggest a 6-inch sandwich to every mom? No, not at all. But in this case, that's what the mom was craving. And we said, okay, then that's what we'll do. There are many times that we have to give moms honey sticks, like when they're pushing and they're exhausted and they've been in labor quite a while or they've been up for a long time. And we do the honey sticks because it gives them that kind of that sugar energy kick without the preservatives and you know all that.
It's like a runner taking a gel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's very easy. They don't have to chew because nobody wants to chew when they're pushing a baby out. Like they just don't want to.
Yeah. So one good thing to do is when you're in early labor and things are just pretty chill and low key, fuel your body. It's kind of like you're getting ready for a race. You know, you eat beforehand and give your body time to digest it and process that before your actual race starts, right? So like for me, I would go in to get induced for several of my labors, and I ate right around the time, like an actual meal, right around the time I was starting the induction, because I knew it would take a while to kick in. And so I wanted to just be caught up with some fuel in my body to help me out. And then once labor gets intense, at least for me, like I wouldn't want to eat. Like you're focusing and it takes a lot of mental and physical energy to get through those contractions. You're not probably thinking about food. So that's why you want to kind of preempt that earlier on in your labor when things are calm and chill and eat. The issue is if you check into the hospital before, and then you're there for several hours and you're there for a long time. I mean, nobody usually in a regular day goes more than
6 hours.
6 hours without eating.
Yeah.
Sometimes people eat every few hours, right? Well, pregnant women do especially eat more frequently. So that's kind of a long time. If you've been in labor for 8 hours and they're not letting you eat, that's a long time for anybody to go without food, let alone somebody whose body is doing something that's
working hard,
really physically demanding, right?
Exactly. And the key thing, what you said, is a mom who is going unmedicated will eat, like she's not going to have that huge desire to eat. It's not like she's going to say, oh, I want to eat a whole pizza. And, I mean, we have to encourage moms. Okay, let's drink some juice. When was the last time you had some water? Let's not have you get dehydrated. Oh, let's have a few bites of this, a few bites of that. Where it becomes different territory is, once again, when moms are medicated, because they're not trying to work through contractions and breathe through contractions. They're just kind of sitting there waiting for the time to pass. And so they have to limit their eating because
they might want to eat a lot more than they actually should be eating.
Exactly.
We're not telling you to eat 3 meals over the course of your labor.
Exactly.
Okay.
But
even then, it's okay for a mother with an epidural to eat.
Right.
She just needs to be conscious of the fact that it needs to be light foods and not too much.
Now, there are some hospitals that I've been to that every mom can only have ice chips. And then they said, okay, so someone for their doctorate thesis did a thing on flavored ice chips in labor and delivery. And they found that it helped moms. It didn't hurt them. Shocking. It's exactly the same as ice chips, just with flavor.
Yeah.
So then they started having like a slushy machine or, the ice chips and kind of thing. But then you're getting dyes and preservatives and food coloring and artificial
probably
sweeteners.
Probably high fructose corn
Oh
syrup.
my goodness, yes. And then there are some hospitals that say, okay, you can have anything clear. So Jello, broth is fantastic. Yeah, exactly. And then some hospitals, very few, but I've been to a couple hospitals that if you don't have an epidural, you can eat whatever you want, but they encourage it to be light. But they also understand that when you're in labor, you don't want to eat heavy food typically. Like I said, that 6-inch sandwich was kind of the exception to the rule. But once you have an epidural, it's just clear liquids. So once again, broth, Jello, that sort of thing. And I understand that part of it, because an epidural changes it changes the rules of the game, the risk factors and everything. But when you are going completely unmedicated, that just makes a difference. And we've used the examples before of, if you get in a car accident on the way home from dinner and you need to have surgery, they're not going to say, oh,
we need to wait though, because I think there's some food in there.
Right. They're not going to do that. Now, it is more convenient for them if you hadn't just gone to a large buffet and had
if you have a scheduled surgery, you're supposed to go in fasting.
Exactly. That is the safe part of it and everything. But that is different from birth. And, you're not burning the calories going in for a regular surgery. Even if it is an emergency surgery, you're not burning the calories that is happening.
Leading up to it.
Right.
So talk to me about that. Because I think that's a big thing that a lot of people hear is you're not supposed to eat during labor because what if you need a C-section?
Right.
So can you is that what hospitals say?
And that's what they're saying. That's what they claim the risk is. But as I've had 2 anesthesiologists say to me, any anesthesiologist that can't handle a woman throwing up during a C-section is an incompetent anesthesiologist and should not be doing this job. I've had 2 separate at 2 different hospitals in 2 different cities say that to me. And I was like, okay. And they said, it is not us that makes this rule. It is the nurses.
Okay.
And it's not really the nurses, it's the hospital, but the nurses are the ones enforcing it. And the sad thing is
And
I've met most of the nurses that they believe that the world's going to end
that's
if
what
you
I was going to say.
eat.
They're not trying to be mean and ruin your birth.
Right.
They've just, it's almost a cultural thing.
It's indoctrinated.
They've heard so much, no, without really doing research or thinking about it. It's just like, oh yeah, you can't eat during labor. So we did another video about this and had a lot of interaction and comments on it. And we've had several women say, for example, they did end up needing a C-section, did not eat during their labor, and still threw up.
Yes.
They're throwing up bile and whatnot.
Yes, that dry heaving.
So unfortunately, not eating doesn't even remove completely the risk of throwing up. Obviously, you throw up less, but
Right.
it's the similar risks that you're involving, because anything that's coming out could potentially be aspirated, right?
Exactly.
And we've had a lot of women say that, yeah, I tried to eat and I got chewed out by a nurse. So I want to ask you about that. What if one of our mamas goes to a hospital, let's just say for an induction, because that's a situation where you're going to the hospital without labor really being going on. So a lot of times you're going to be there for a long time,
Right.
and you're starting to feeling worn down and hungry, and you want to eat, but the hospital policy is you can't eat. What do they do? Just sneak it in, defy them?
Right.
Like, what are they supposed to do? Leave and come eat something and come back?
It's not like they're going to say, oh, okay, we're going to have to turn the Pitocin off now, and you can't have your baby today because you ate that cup of yogurt. No, and you're not a child. You don't need chewed out. It's one of those things where, I can tell you what I would do, but I can't tell you what you should do.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
What would you do? Let's hear it.
So let me give an example. I was having appendicitis. And I was so hungry. I hadn't eaten yet. And I wasn't throwing up with this appendicitis. My appendix had actually already died 10 years before, but we didn't know that until. So anyway, some complications that way. But I was in pain, but I was also very hungry. And I said, they're not going to let me eat. It's going to be hours before they can get me into surgery. So please let me grab a sandwich before we have to go to the emergency room. So my husband went, we got me a sandwich. I'm in the emergency, I'm checking in, I'm eating my sandwich, and the nurse starts chewing me out. And I said, what are they going to do? Not take out my appendix? Well, they don't like it if you eat, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so, then they send me for the, to go through to see if it's my appendix. Of course, they can't tell or not, they, do the whole steps. So the anesthesiologist comes in and he goes, okay, when did you last eat? Because he wants to know. That way he can be prepared. He's not going to say, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do the surgery. She ate. He just said, okay, how long ago did you eat? And I said, it's been about 2 hours, because I knew it would be a couple hours. And he said, what did you eat? And I said, a sandwich. And he goes, that's it? And I said, yeah. He goes, okay. Like, he didn't care, and when I was a doula with moms, they'd be eating yogurt. They would just wait till the nurse left the room, and they would, eat some yogurt.
They're not inspecting your bags when you check in at the hospital,
exactly.
right?
Right. And the moms weren't eating a lot. They just wanted that little bit of something. And so, if it came down that they needed a C-section, the anesthesiologist would say, has she eaten anything? And of course the nurse is like, no. And I'm like, yeah, she had a yogurt. And he's like, oh, okay. Like they didn't care. They just need to know so that they can be prepared and what to expect.
Right.
Could potentially
she does
happen.
have food in her stomach, so be aware.
What to expect.
Yeah.
But they really don't. Now, once again, should you be eating a full meal? No, but a mom having a natural childbirth is not going to eat very much. Once again, I gave that one example, and that is out of 1,000 births, that is the only woman that has ever done that. And it's what
she was okay.
Yeah, and it actually helped her have her baby
because
we let her follow her instincts, and the epidural interferes with those instincts.
Yeah.
And so that's why that changes. But they're not going to kick you out. And honestly, now, like, I'm glad I'm not having children now because I'm a little too spicy, compared to back when I was in my 20s. But now if somebody said that to me, I would be like, excuse me, I am not a child. Well, you're not supposed to
watch me.
Right. That's kind of me. And I'd be like, you show me the research. You show me the research, because I can show you the research on how it does help in labor. And so that's just kind of my spiciness.
Yeah.
So you don't want to get on the bad side of your nurse, but at the same time, you're not a child. And if you're doing things that your body instinctually tells you, and you're not having complications like preeclampsia, okay? Preeclampsia, those can change the rules of the game a little bit.
Okay.
But even with preeclampsia, you can have light food. Just be careful. So,
Like, what do you mean by be careful? What should you eat less?
yeah,
Make sure you're not having as much sugar, or
I just,
what?
once again, I wouldn't eat a full meal.
Okay.
It should be about snacking, you know, that very light, easily digested, not have a spaghetti dinner kind of thing. So, but it really is. I have zero restrictions on moms at my birth center, zero restrictions. And in fact, more times, absolutely, I don't think I've ever said to a mom, don't eat that. Postpartum I have, when they went and got a McDonald's and fast food, and I was like, please don't eat fast food. Like, you need real
Nourish
nourishment.
your body after
Nourish
what
your
you've just
body.
done.
You know, that's the only time I've asked a mom to, you know, please let's do something different. But in labor, I have never restricted what she eats. And in fact, most of the time I'm saying, do you have grapes?
It's the opposite. You're encouraging them to eat.
Exactly.
So to be clear, I just want to make sure I understand. If a mom does eat in labor, the risk that she's taking on for herself is that she eats too much and gets sick and throws up.
Right. I mean, there
Which
is
is not very pleasant.
Midget chance that she could aspirate. But
Okay.
really, that's going to happen if you have an anesthesiologist that isn't doing their job properly.
Well,
That isn't very
okay,
good
so
at
you're
it.
taking the risk because you might get an anesthesiologist
Right.
who isn't doing their job properly.
Right.
But like we said before, even if you don't eat, you still might throw up during a C-section. So eating, the risk versus benefit. The risk is you might get sick and throw up.
Yep.
The other risk is if you do go in for a C-section, you could throw up, and there is a chance you could aspirate. We're not saying there's absolutely zero chance for that.
Right.
But when you weigh the risks versus the benefits, the risk of not eating is becoming exhausted,
Right.
getting to a point where you can't
cope.
keep pushing, and then they're going to want to do sometimes a C-section because you just can't keep going.
Right.
You can't cope emotionally or physically. So again, a lot of times that's going to lead to more interventions because it's like, well, we got to get the baby out. And if mom can't be involved in labor anymore, then we're going to go to increased interventions in order to get the baby out, right?
Well,
And each one of those interventions brings risks with it.
exactly. And I've had a few times over the years that we've had a mom go to the hospital for one reason or another. And it wasn't, you know, an emergency situation. It was just like, okay, this is one of those times we need to go to the hospital. And I'll call the hospital and say, okay, they're coming in, you know, here's the situation, here's what's happening, letting you know. And they'll say, do you know when they're going to arrive? And I'll look at my phone and I'm getting a text from the person that's going with them to the hospital saying they stopped to get something to eat first. And so I'll have to tell the nurse, it's going to be a little longer than I thought. Apparently they're going to go get a sandwich first. And the nurse, honestly, the nurses just laugh. You know, in our area here, they just go, okay. You know? But the mom knows that once she gets to the hospital, per hospital protocol, she can't have that sandwich, and she knows she needs that sandwich. And so she'll go get a sandwich on the way to the hospital. And I'm like, you know what? You do you. That's awesome.
That's great. Okay, so I think that's some really important stuff to take in consideration. The fact that there are actually benefits to eating during labor. Have we made it clear enough what those benefits are?
Okay, energy, not being hungry. I just remember being in labor and thinking, I am just so hungry. I didn't want a full meal. I just wanted a few bites of something. Just a few bites of that sandwich or bites of the scrambled egg or, you know, whatever it was. I didn't want the full meal. And you'll say, I'm hungry. And they'll go, oh, we'll just give, you know, through an IV, your IV. And I'm like, an IV is not going to fill my belly.
That doesn't satiate you, does it?
Right. You know, it's not going to stop my belly from growling. But it really, so it is that emotional factor of it. But then it is also, you know, you saying, hey, I need energy, I need those carbohydrates, I need that protein, I need to be able to keep going. You can't run an 18-hour marathon through the night without sustenance.
Yeah, even just I've been doing some hiking lately. I always bring some snacks that are easily digested and give my body quick fuel on a hike, because otherwise you start getting tired and worn down. I'm not a runner, otherwise I'd give that analogy, which we have already mentioned it. But I do hiking, and I always bring some snacks because everybody knows your body needs fuel. And labor is an intense thing. Your body is expending a lot of energy. And if you don't replenish it, that's where the exhaustion, and it's mental and emotional exhaustion as well as physical exhaustion. But that gets worse when your body is starved and your brain is starved too.
And you know,
as well.
Of my 4 labors, only my first one, they starved me. My second one, the hospital let me eat. And my mother-in-law, I remember, she's a nurse. And I said, oh, I'm really hungry. I want to eat. And my mother-in-law said, oh, you can't. And the nurse said, yeah, she can. She's fine. As long as she doesn't have an epidural, she can eat whatever she wants. And only my first labor was the one that I did that dry heaving, throwing up bile kind of thing. My other births where I snacked, I didn't have that nausea. So, and I think a lot of that was the blood sugar levels not dropping low, and me being able to handle the intensity of labor with a little bit of food and that energy compared to being starved.
Yeah, and having an empty stomach too makes a lot of things worse there.
It does.
I will say that for an unmedicated natural birth that goes pretty well, after you give birth, then it's time to pull out the steak dinner.
Oh my gosh.
I'm always like, I'm ready. I'm ready for a real meal. Like I've given birth in the birth center at Heather's Birth Center for my last several babies. And every time on the way home, I stopped to get a nice meal that included steak with it, and just take out. My husband went in and got it for me, and I ate it before.
I wanted meat.
Yeah.
I was like, give me meat.
Like, I want hearty, good food. And that is one of the benefits of doing a natural birth too, is that your recovery is so fast that you feel good afterward, and you feel like, okay, I want to celebrate and have a nice meal and refuel my body. Because even if you are eating throughout labor, like we're encouraging you to do, it's not meal replacements. And if you've been in labor for 12, 18, 24 hours, you haven't had a real full-on meal during all of that time, so you're going to be hungry.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely, if you feel like eating in labor, you should be able to eat in labor. And my personal advice, don't let the nurses chew you out, and have them check their hospital policies. A lot of times it's just kind of well, he said, she said, so you can't eat. And ask them to show you the hospital policy. And even then, guys, it's your body. You can eat. Once again, I wouldn't recommend eating before a planned scheduled surgery, but in labor, the evidence is there. The research is there. You should eat in labor.
And the nurses aren't around that much anyway. Like if you bring food with you in your room, I feel like you could pretty easily get away with just having some snacks in there without anyone ever being the wiser for it, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So you do you.
Yes. We're going to wrap up there. And remember, we do have a free online birth class called How to Give Birth with Practically No Pain. That's our specialty, having low pain births. So there's a link below. Check that out to learn how to have a low pain birth.